The Jets win a preseason game but lose their quarterback. We'll discuss that along with other observations on the preseason opener on today's episode of the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, August 15th, 2022, and I'm your host, John B. from GanggreenNation.com. Thanking you for making this show your first listen or your first watch every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Big shout out to subscribers to the podcast. And to join that group, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps the channel out, and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today, our episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Well, the Jets opened preseason on Friday night with a 24-21 victory over the Eagles. However, that's not the story. The story is never about the final score in preseason. Nobody cares what your record is. Nobody really cares at the end of the day whether you win or you lose a game. The story was about Zach Wilson. I say this every single year. If nothing else, you win preseason by not suffering serious injuries, and you lose in preseason if you suffer serious injuries. If all else fails, that's my rule for preseason. Yeah, I'd rather see my guys play well than play poorly. I'd rather see young players look like they're developing than not, but at the end of the day, preseason doesn't really matter that much. It's mostly about avoiding injuries, and unfortunately, the Jets were not able to avoid an injury as Zach Wilson suffered an injury. I did a little mini episode on Saturday about Wilson's injury, so I'll try not to repeat what I said there. Obviously a big deal for the Jets, but in a weird way, because of the way this was reported on Friday night, you almost feel relieved because the indications are Wilson's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. Could be back by opening day, a bone bruise and then torn meniscus in his knee. And on Friday night, a very prominent NFL, I don't know if doctor is the right word. It's essentially this guy who runs this website. He's a doctor. He's a former team doctor. And he runs this site where he diagnoses his injuries by watching the game on TV, which is utterly ridiculous. Just utterly ridiculous. It's a sign we just have too much content in the year 2022. The fact that some doctor thinks they can diagnose a player without examining him. But this doctor put out what was, first of all, a very irresponsible report, but also what turned out to be a false report that Wilson had suffered a season-ending injury. Fortunately, it's less serious. But because of that report, because of all the speculation, and even without that report, whenever you see a player suffer a non-contact knee injury, it's a little scary. A lot of those turn out to be very serious injuries, but sounds like the Jets will have Zach Wilson back at least at some point early in the regular season. Now, Robert Saleh did throw a little caveat out there yesterday when he spoke to the media, and he said they won't know for sure until Zach Wilson undergoes his surgery. So, there's a little bit of a caveat there, but it sounds like the Jets will not be missing Zach Wilson for too long. At least you hope not. Still, you hate to lose him. The preseason, him missing those games, I don't know how much that matters, but losing the practice reps. Jets are breaking in all these new players. They have a bunch of new pass-catching weapons for Zach Wilson this year. You would have liked to have seen them get better acquainted before the season, whether that's practice or whether that's in preseason. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not the type of thing that's going to make or break Zach Wilson. But, I can't look at this as a positive. I can't, I've seen people celebrate, and I completely understand why you're celebrating, because you thought you may have lost him for the season, and it doesn't look like you. So this is not the worst case scenario. And I think Friday night, if you're asking most of us, would we sign up for 2 to 4 weeks? The answer would be yes. So from that point, it's a positive. But I also look at this from the perspective going into the game. If you told me Zach Wilson was going to get hurt 2 to 4 weeks, I'd be pretty upset. And so the Jets will have to move forward. Joe Flacco is going to be the starting quarterback for the rest of the preseason. Whether or not he plays week 1 against Baltimore is unclear. Also, some personal publicity. I'm like the face of the Locked On Podcast Network today because of the Zach Wilson injury. So you can also check me out on Locked On NFL and Locked On Today, a couple of our other podcasts here, for more thoughts on the Joe Flacco situation. Needless to say, if you've been following, I've not been a big fan of the way the Jets have handled the backup quarterback spot in the offseason. I think Flacco may be able to get you through a game or two. I think it helps that the Jets have added all these skill players over the course of the offseason, whether we're talking about the run game, adding Breece Hall and Laken Tomlinson, whether we're talking the tight ends, whether you're drafting Garrett Wilson, who looked very good in this game. I thought, whatever the box score said, he did not play very long, but I like Garrett Wilson was really getting open quite a bit. You'll have to, maybe the Jets will have to go with Joe Flacco. We'll see. We'll talk about that if it eventually happens. The one thing I'll say is I do think Joe Flacco can get you through a game or two. We know without a doubt Joe Flacco cannot get you through a full season. If you don't know that, you can go back through all the recent seasons when Joe Flacco's been his team's starting quarterback, and you can see how those have gone. Joe Flacco might be able to get you through a game or two. So this is the type of situation the Jets, you would think, should be able to weather unless Zach Wilson has a setback. Now, as for the actual game, before the injury, there were some people going crazy about Zach Wilson's performance because he threw an interception. Also missed Garrett Wilson badly on a pass where Wilson was open. And I go back to what I said Friday. I'll go back to what I said Friday and every other preseason game I think I've ever done this podcast, or even every preseason game I've ever written about. You cannot go overboard with the results of these games. Now listen, that interception was a horrible interception. And it's the type of interception that just can never happen. There are different types of interceptions. There are interceptions and there are interceptions. Sometimes, there's miscommunication on a route. Sometimes a receiver contributes. That happens more frequently than you think. The quarterback is less to blame on a lot of interceptions than people realize because it goes on the quarterback stat sheet. But frequently frequently interceptions are a combination of the quarterback failing and the receiver failing. And sometimes it's nobody's fault. Sometimes it's just plain miscommunication. That one was Zach Wilson. I mean, there's no question about it. That was a timing route where he just held onto the ball forever. I mean, that pass is like a quick little pass to Corey Davis. The ball's got to be on Corey Davis as he's turning. And Zach Wilson stared him down and allowed linebacker to undercut him and make an interception. And Zach Wilson's second read was also open on that play. So if he was a little hesitant there, he could have checked it to the second read. It was an ugly one. And again, he missed that throw to Garrett Wilson, but how much do you want me to read into like a quarter of play? How many times do you see a quarterback go out and struggle the first quarter of a game and play well the rest of the game? That's what you're dealing with in the preseason. So if Zach Wilson went out there and led the Jets to a pair of touchdown drives Friday night, people would be going crazy about how he's now the franchise quarterback. Now we're set. Now we know it for sure. That wouldn't be true either. You just have to take these with a grain of salt. I'd rather Zach Wilson have played better on Friday night. I'd rather he not have thrown that interception, but it's only one play. How much do you want me to read into one play? I'm not going to read a lot into that performance. And I think the same thing goes for the defensive side of the ball because the Eagles came out and marched right down the field. And I saw a lot of panic online from among Jets fans. I guess that's just part of the story is that we have not had a game since January, so people are going to overreact to whatever happens. I saw online comments that the season's over. I'm not joking. I saw people talking about how the season is going to be a long season. The season's over. We're doomed because the Eagles went right down the field and scored a touchdown. And as I rewatched the game Saturday morning, I watched Friday and then I rewatched Saturday. It struck me how vanilla the Jets were playing on defense. Jets were really not dialing anything up. And despite all this, they actually did get a stop. If Quincy Williams just doesn't hit Jalen Hurts on the sidelines, the Jets get a stop there. Quincy Williams made a dumb play, picked up a personal foul hitting Jalen Hurts on the sideline, but he doesn't do that, which is completely immaterial to how the defense played. The Jets get a stop. And Quincy Williams, I thought, had a rough game. There was another play where he missed a tackle. Now, he got a little nudge. It could have been a block in the back, but I mentioned this last week with Quincy Williams. One of the things I'm looking for is whether he can better channel his aggression because he's a very aggressive player, and that leads to a lot of highlight reel hits, but it also leads to him running himself out of plays sometimes. It leads to him maybe taking a penalty or two he shouldn't. Not a great start for Quincy Williams. Again, I don't want to go crazy, though, because it's one preseason game. He's a starter and didn't play that much. A bad first quarter in a preseason game, it's the only thing you watch. So a guy can have a bad quarter in a regular season game, and you'll forget about it by the end of the game. In the preseason, it's your only memory of them. So all of this puts more pressure on each individual play in preseason, which is ridiculous because who cares about preseason? So all this is to say, relax a little bit. I remember back in 2019 when the Jets came out their first series with Adam Gase as the head coach. They went right down the field against the Giants, scored an easy. I was like clockwork. They had the easiest time in the world moving the ball offensively on that first series. Scored a touchdown. All the talk was about how great the offense was going to be that year because of the one preseason series. Did not work out so well for the Adam Gase tenure. So if you're going crazy about, if you're over analyzing what happened Friday night, don't. You can analyze the plays, and what the Jets did on the first team, both sides of the ball, was not very good. But where you get into trouble is making sweeping conclusions about the future of the franchise based on that, because there's not really much to be gained by that. However, we can evaluate performances. I thought there were some standout performances for the Jets on Friday, and I'll tell you who they came from as we continue on this Monday episode of Locked On Jets. Of course, we're talking about football here, but I'd like to take a second to talk about something more serious, and that's your mental health. Life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself through it all. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs, and they can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. This is not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, and it's available to people worldwide. You can log onto your account anytime and send a message to your therapist, and you can schedule weekly phone or video sessions. That way you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. And getting therapy every week is as easy as a few clicks on your laptop or phone. And with therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit. And BetterHelp makes it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp is a great way to invest in yourself. No matter what, you should be taking care of your mental health. Therapy can really be helpful to you, and perhaps BetterHelp can aid you in that venture. And you should know that BetterHelp has a special offer for my listeners. You can get 20% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Again, that's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON. Thank you again for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. We're recapping the Jets' 24-21 victory over the Eagles Friday night in their preseason opener. Of course, the score doesn't matter that much, but the Jets got off to a bad start in this game. They were down 14-0 after a quarter, 14-3 at halftime, and then second half, the guys who were kind of lower on the roster played well and led the team to a comeback victory. There were lots of players who I thought were standouts in this game. You know, a guy I thought played really well in context is Max Mitchell, who started at right tackle in place of either Dwayne Brown or George Fant. I don't think the Jets have revealed what their alignment's going to be on the offensive line, although it kind of sounds like, based on some practice reports, that Fant was moving over to the right tackle position, so it could be Brown at left tackle, Fant at right tackle. Mitchell played, and the thing with Max Mitchell is the only play most people remember is the play that just gets replayed over and over, and that's the play Zach Wilson got hurt. And the sequence where Zach Wilson got hurt began with a pressure because Max Mitchell got beaten off the snap, so Wilson had to scramble. He actually did a good job evading pressure and then suffered that injury when he's tried to cut up the field. Max Mitchell, outside of that, I was pretty impressed. Now, I was keying on him quite a bit. That was really the only time I saw him lose completely. I thought he got a good push in the run game, showed a bit of a nasty streak. I thought for the most part he held up pretty, aside from that one play, which of course is the only play anybody cares about, but outside of that, held up better than I thought he would. Now, I mean, I don't know his starting material. I think if the Jets were more confident, and the Jets see him every day, if the Jets were more confident, I don't think they signed Dwayne Brown, but Max Mitchell, I think, if we're judging where he is, maybe the best backup tackle on the team. And I don't want to read too much. I'm just the guy who gave you a lecture on let's not read too much into one preseason game, but Max Mitchell was a little bit better than I was expecting him to be. So there's a positive for the Jets, in my view. Another rookie, another fourth-round rookie, Michael Clemens. And I got to take credit for this one because this was the pick I criticized. This was the only pick the Jets made in the draft that I criticized. And Michael Clemens goes out there and looks great. Now, in the second half, he's playing against a lot of guys who are fringe roster players, a fourth-round pick. Even a fourth-round pick is going to be better than a lot of the guys who are out there. But he was even seeing some time early in the game against starters, and I thought getting a good push. Playing with some power, showing some power in his hands. I thought really promising debut from Michael Clemens. And the Jets may have some tough decisions to make on this defensive line. Not that the Jets are full of stars on the defensive line, but they have guys who contributed. Jabari Zuniga, who really through the first 2 years of his career has not shown you a whole lot. I thought he played a really strong game. He had 6 tackles. He had a sack. He might be on the outside looking in. Preseason performance only matters so much. You also look at what you're projecting from a player. You're looking at what these players have done during their careers. I don't know how much Jabari Zuniga is going to be saved by some strong performances in the second half of preseason games. In fact, it almost feels like the Jets kind of gave up on him last year because he spent a lot of time on the practice squad. So it's not like it's not like he's starting with a blank slate. And sometimes you'll see this. Sometimes you'll see a guy go out and play really well in preseason, and he gets cut. And you have to remember, doing this in the second half of games in the preseason only matters so much. But to the extent Jabari Zuniga can help himself, I think you can make a case he helped himself a bit in this game. Another guy who I think may be in a competition with somebody else for one roster spot, that's Lawrence Cager. Cager had 2 catches for 40 yards. And beyond that, he had another catch that was wiped out on a penalty that looked like it was on Denzel Mims. He got called on Mims. It may have been somebody else who lined up incorrectly. But the way I view it is, I think Cager's in a competition with Kenny Yeboah. And essentially, there's only room for one young receiving type developmental tight end. And I think Cager was the winner in this one because he showed a couple things. On that play that got wiped out, he made a contested catch. And Cager's big. Cager began his career at wide receiver. This game was kind of about winning contested catches, but he also showed some ability to get down the field because the 2 catches that stood up were just kind of dump-offs to him. They kind of dragged him along the line of scrimmage. One of those classic Shanahan-LaFleur type of plays where the quarterback just dumps it off to the guy and lets him cut up the field. Turn those into 40 yards, 1 for 29 yards, 1 for 11. So you're kind of combining abilities. You're showing you can make catches in traffic, but you can also make plays with the ball in your hands. Cager's been an intriguing player to me. I'm not sure how good he's going to be, but the move to tight end I think is a very logical move for his skill set. For some of the limitations he have may hold him back at wide receiver, but won't so much at the tight end position. So I'm excited to see what Lawrence Cager does going forward. Another guy who I thought was pretty impressive, Zonovan Bam Knight. Now, you're going to look at the box score. You did not see the game. You're going to look at the box score and say, John, are you crazy? The guy had 13 yards on 6 carries. Au contraire. 3 of the carries were on the goal line, which is naturally going to limit the number of yards you can get. And he scored a touchdown on one of them. He just looked like a tough runner. But beyond looking like a tough runner, he set up the Jets winning touchdown with a big kickoff return. And he showed he kind of had a second gear as well. And that's one of the things, how many different things can you do? You can lower your shoulder, but can you also turn on that extra gear? And he returned that kickoff 52 yards. Now, Zonovan Knight's not going to be the starting running back. He's not going to be the backup running back. He may not even make the team. He may be a practice squatter. And we know the Jets had a first-team All-Pro return guy last year, Braxton Berrios. Zonovan Knight's not going to make the team to be the primary return man. But he's a guy who could sit on the practice squad. And you've seen in Kyle Shanahan-type offenses, or Mike Shanahan or LaFleur offenses in the past, guys who are kind of unheralded, sometimes you have an injury. Sometimes they step up and produce. And we know Breece Hall is going to be Breece Hall and Michael Carter are going to be the top 2 backs. I would expect the Jets to keep Tevin Coleman, just to have a veteran presence out there, somebody who especially knows what he's doing in the passing game. So there may not be a roster spot for him, but Zonovan Bam Knight, if he continues to play well, and he's reportedly had a very good camp, he's the type of guy who could put himself in position to perhaps take on a role later in the season as guys get worn down, if the Jets need somebody to produce for a week or two. So that's another guy who I think really stood out. Another guy, Rashad Wildgoose, who had 5 tackles in this game and did a good job tackling in space, which is what you're looking for a guy in the secondary. I was impressed by his performance as well. So you could say there were plenty of guys who did a good job. I mean, if you're looking for guys who did not do a good job, I hate to say it, Denzel Mims, who at one point, in the second half had back-to-back receptions that extended drives on third down, but then dropped a pass. And we've used the 7th receiver in. I mean, I keep saying it, as much as I want it to happen for Denzel Mims, there's not a lot that really suggests that Denzel Mims is going to be a player for this team. 7th receiver in, drops a pass. It's looking ugly for Denzel Mims. Mike White, I thought, struggled when he was in there. I don't know how much that really means, but I thought White took over for Zach Wilson. Joe Flacco wasn't playing. I thought he had a really rough go of things. White was only 10 of 20 for 98 yards, and as we've seen, if it's not their shorts, he does have trouble pushing the ball down the field. However, there was a quarterback who did succeed for the Jets on Friday night. And as we close out this Monday episode of Locked On Jets, we're going to talk about the new preseason legend, Chris Streveler. Of course, the beginning of the preseason means the regular season's not far away, and you should know that BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news for every league. Yes, that means baseball. It means the NBA. It means the NHL. It even means combat sports, esports, and yeah, golf, but it means the NFL as well. And BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. And in just a couple of weeks, you want to lay some money down. You think the Jets are going to have a big season? You can bet on them at BetOnline. It's where the game starts. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday. We're talking about the Jets preseason opener. They beat the Eagles Friday night in Philadelphia 24-21. We've talked about both Jets quarterbacks so far. We talked about Zach Wilson's injury. We talked about Mike White's struggles. But move over Brett Ratliff. Move over Matt Sims. Move over Bryce Petty. There's a new depth quarterback for the Jets who's succeeding in preseason and getting everybody excited. Chris Streveler, former member of Winnipeg in the CFL. Winnipeg, by the way, a city that has a hockey team called the Jets, so a little tie in there. Former Grey Cup champion comes into the game. And you can be honest, you probably didn't even know Chris Streveler was on the roster. You probably never even heard of him until Friday night when he replaced Mike White, but he led the game-winning drive for the Jets, finished 6 of 9 for 62 yards. Also had a big scramble on that drive. 1 to 2 scrambles, had a 23-yard scramble, had another 8-yard scramble earlier, finished 2 rushing attempts for 31 yards. The next legend, right? Well, probably about as much as Brett Ratliff and Matt Sims. You know, you look at what Streveler did. He completed 6 passes. 4 of them were just dump-offs to tight ends on like kind of what I was saying with Lawrence Cage, or that classic Shanahan LaFleur play where they just drag the tight end across the line of scrimmage and just have the quarterback flip it out to him. So let's go a little easy. I mean, I see people saying like Chris Streveler is now the future of the franchise. Chris Streveler should be the primary backup. It's like, let's go a little easy there. He led a game-winning drive against 3rd and 4th stringers, and 2/3 of his completions were just dumping it off to the tight ends. But still, I think that's like one of the fun things about preseason, because this is a guy who probably is not going to be on the team in a couple of weeks. Probably is not going to have much of a career in the NFL, but he gets to be the hero for a night. And Streveler, if you look at his career, is a guy who's really more of a runner than a quarterback. I don't know if Taysom Hill's the right comparison, because I'm not sure how versatile he is, but even back in Canada, he was kind of a runner. So, I mean, I don't think the Jets are going to keep him on the roster. In fact, I'm not even sure the Jets are going to keep him on the practice squad, because you assume, especially if Zach Wilson's not going to IR, then you're going to have Flacco and White on the team. So you already have 3 quarterbacks. Do you really need a 4th guy on the practice squad? I could see in theory if you wanted to experiment with Streveler's running ability, maybe build in a Taysom Hill type package. I don't think they're going to do that, though. I mean, I think that this is one of those guys we're going to look back on like a Ratliff or like a Matt Sims as somebody who's like a preseason legend for the Jets. And it'd be cool if he developed. I mean, it would be a lot of fun. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does end up on the practice squad. But no matter what happens, he'll always have that one night. He'll always have that one game where he performed. He's got a couple more preseason games to try and impress the Jets or try and impress some other team. But it's the stuff of legends, the preseason legend, the legends of August. Chris Streveler adds his name to that Jets pantheon. Anyway, that's all for our episode today. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to it. Leave the show a 5-star review if you enjoy it on a podcast source. Big thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.